Hello, comma, everyone, exclamation. How are we doing today, question mark. Well, comma, I'm contraction doing great, exclamation. The reason I'm talking like this is because most students and many adults don't even think about punctuation when they read, period. This is what I would call verbalize your punctuation day or week in your classroom, your grade level, got classroom, comma, grade level, comma, or school, exclamation. When I do this activity with students in a training, comma, capital I'm contraction, so used to doing it. I am so used to doing it, comma, that I do it without even thinking most of the time, period. What I want to do for today's video in 10 minutes or less, I set my timer to go off in 10 minutes and I'll make sure that my alarm is set to ring. Sometimes I forget to do that. All right, it's going to ring. Once that 10 minutes goes off, I will only allow myself to speak for 60 seconds or more. So what I want to do in this video is explain the number one reason that your kids struggled with editing. And it's going to be the kind of question they most struggle with. If you watch my video from yesterday or the day before, you saw me use my hand to teach CUPSS, capitalization, usage, punctuation, spelling, and sentence boundaries. I may as well cut my pinky off because in most schools, most programs, curriculums, they don't even mention cups with two S's. They don't talk about run-ons and fragments. They don't mention the importance of understanding that sentence boundaries, knowing when a sentence is too long, called a run-on, or when it's too short because it doesn't have a subject and a predicate, a fragment, that has to be practiced with students. So I need you to make me a pinky promise that we are going to practice the run-ons and fragments. So I want to show you before um, I run out of time already. This is for those of you who have already purchased the emergency room for extended responses. Ding, ding, the little stick man here. And editing, revising this portion over here. You're going to notice that the same 5 letters, but the same 5 words I mentioned on my fingers, you get a class set of these with the training. And for all of you who have ordered up to today, I already sent them in the mail to you to the address that you gave me, and you already received um, confirmation, the tracking number, and many of you already have them and have already received several videos kind of building the foundation. So you also will see in your packet this graphic organizer that has a class set of these, which was the same as last year's, a class set of these, which was not the same as last year's. So if you choose to uh, get involved in the ER, I want you to notice that it has the engine for the introduction slash idea I. It has 2 cars in the middle so that you can have evidence-based explaining and exploding. So we'll use yellow highlighting for evidence. And so if you have one piece of evidence, you'll tell me where it is, and then you'll explain and explode that evidence. Depending on your grade level, you'll try to explain and explode more. You'll have transitions between your ideas. You'll have your second evidence. You'll highlight it in yellow, and then you can make a little blue box. And for those of you that have the monkeys, the reason that the purple monkeys and orange monkeys are there, if you're students or you decide that the students are going to show 4 pieces of evidence, something that I've mentioned in several trainings in person and online is each evidence example explained and exploded. So whatever evidence that you give me, wherever you tell me it is right here, then you have to try and explain it down here. And so before I had just the yellow evidence and the blue um, explaining, but I felt like 1 piece of evidence was not enough for the upper grade. So we had to have at least 2, and in many cases 3. So what you can do with these new trains, for those of you who are getting them, you can use blue and green for your first evidence, explaining, exploding, and do that in the top half here. And then purple and orange, you can use the lower half to explain a third example of evidence or a fourth one if you want to. And again, you can use the monkeys to count how many details or sentences that you have. And then the red caboose is still there like before, but it has the C, it has the word conclusion to remind yourself we have to have a closing and we have to have conventions. When they say conclusion, they do not mean an indented paragraph. It just means close with something that ties your topic and your idea, your topic, the prompt, the question, and your idea. So introduce the topic and the idea. You can have your central idea, your controlling idea, your thesis. All of that is great, but you have to just make sure. So I wanted you to see that, and then uh, the revising and the reading is the inside here, where most of this is the same. There's just a few minor changes that I made for uh, those of you that are having to teach a combination of reading and revising. So that's why that graphic organizer that you get 25 hard copies of and digital copies says readvising, because before I can revise something, I have to read it. So reading is the comprehension, understanding the content, and revising is improving the content, how something is organized or how it's developed. That's the revising. But I just want to make sure that I spend my remaining time on this video showing you the difference between a regular editing question and a run-on fragment. So here we go. In elementary, you're going to get 8 questions in 2 passages, probably 4 and 4 of CUPSS with 2 S's. Middle school, you'll get 9 questions, more than likely 5 and 4 in the 2 passages. In high school, you'll get 11 questions in the 2 passages, probably 6 and 5. And if they say error, more than likely the error is going to be box number 2 here on the constructed or the what they call non-multiple choice items. It'll be called inline choice, and it'll be selecting from a drop-down menu. So most of the time, the editing that we have seen has just been regular multiple choice if it's on paper, but in Texas online tests, it's going to be A, B, C, D. And if it's revising, you'll either get regular multiple choice, drop down, or text entry. So the first questions, most of the questions, probably about 6 of the questions are just going to be regular CUPSS questions, which is great for you guys who don't practice or don't have a means to practice the pinky of sentence boundaries. It'll say what error, what change. So if it's error, it probably means it's going to have a drop down menu. It won't be regular multiple choice, but as soon as they see change in sentence, they can label CUPSS. Okay. If they see one of these 2, that's when it's different. If number 2 says, what is the correct or best way to write sentence blank? That means they're going to see one sentence, and that sentence will either be a run-on or a fragment. I call it a ROF. So as soon as they see correct or best not change, you're going to teach your students to underline correct or best, to label ROF, to know that that sentence that they're going to look at, that single sentence, is going to be a run-on or fragment, which is this pinky down here we'll look at in a minute. The other kind is a little bit different. It'll say, what is the correct slash best, same words, way to write sentences, blank and blank. So here are sentences blank and blank. And so what SAF means is that you have a sentence, a complete thought, followed by a sentence that's a fragment and it's missing the subject or the predicate, or it's fast. And I'll just switch the two monkeys around so you can see the difference, that the first one is a fragment and the second one is a sentence. And your students have to be able to figure that out. And so you'll see here in the explanation, you're going to be checking for run-ons, check for fragments, for a comma conjunction problem, for repetition, content, meaning, a cause and effect issue, or a compare and contrast error. So there's my phone ringing. And so that's what I want to make sure that you understand, that if you don't have something that addresses this one, I can guarantee you that elementary, you had at least one, if not two, of questions 2 or 3. And middle school, you probably had at least 1 or 2. And high school, it's possibly you had 1 or 2 or possibly even 3. So I would ask you, when you're looking at your student data, when you can go into each student, you can look at the questions and how they're worded. When it says this, you're going to have to check and see, is that mistake a run-on, a fragment? Is it a sentence and fragment, or is it a fragment and sentence? Or is it no mistake? Because sometimes they'll just throw something at your kids. And to be very honest, and I'm going to make myself visible very large here, what happens most of the time is every single time that those questions are asked, because most people practice CUPSS without the second S, the pinky S of sentence boundaries, the percent correct has been anywhere between 20 to 50% correct in Texas. And I already saw some of the grade levels, and it was the same. That the question that had to do with run-ons and fragments was in the 30s or the 40s or the 50s. And so you can check the state average, but when they come out, you'll see that those questions struggled. So I highly recommend that you do that. So I have a passage. I've already made an online practice test for capitalization, for usage, punctuation, spelling, and sentence boundaries, so that your students can practice each skill in isolation. I've got skill, it's multiplying. But the one I'm going to work on in several videos, one question at a time, is the one specifically for sentence boundaries. So that will be my next several videos when it comes to editing. I'm going to continue to help you all in the emergency room of extended responses, but I want to make sure that we address some editing and revising issues as well as we go along. And so I'm going to take you through every single question, and I'm going to be using my online version. And so all of you who are in the ER for extended responses, editing and revising, you'll get all these materials. You'll get that binder. You'll get all of the online tests. I have about 7 to 10 already ready to go, but I don't want to send them all at once. I want to be able to send them as I can model them for you. So those of you who are already signed up for the ER training, I'm going to send you an email that has capitalization, usage, punctuation, spelling, and the run-ons and fragments link, where your kids can take it digitally and also online. And it shows you in the email what page you can find it in my big binder. And it also has a code how to get in and take the test and do that with your students, and be able to practice in an online format. So my next video will be question number 1, practicing a run-on, a fragment, or a sentence boundary with a sentence and fragment, or a fragment and sentence. So take care. God bless. Make sure if you don't have these kind of materials that you make some. It's an anchor chart that has that second S, because sentence boundaries, not sentence structure, a sentence boundary, they don't understand when to stop the sentence. And so I'll be showing you some cool strategies on how to do that. So thanks and God bless.